Alright, so it's finally time for me to show you guys what I do in a Linux gaming setup. Now this was a question I had in one of my comments, and upon looking on my channel, I actually haven't done one of these in like a couple of years. So as you may know, since the arrival of the Steam Deck, anything that has to do with gaming on Linux had been light speed. I'm telling you, with the introduction of Proton, Glorious Eggroll, and tons of other stuff, what I used to have to do is dual boot just to play a game. We no longer have to worry about those because most of the games work off Linux. Now, obviously competitive games that still use anti-cheat and stuff like might or may still require Windows, but other than that, most games now actually just work on Linux. It's just a matter of switching some settings and you should get anything to work. Also, with all the advancements that we have, it might even be faster to game on Linux now because we have Gamescope where we could actually put FSR on anything. So if you have a game that was actually not running fast before, it might work better now. And with DLSS enablers and stuff, and for something like the Mini Farms MS-A1 with the AMD graphic card, you could definitely benefit from all those little perks. Now I am planning to switch out this computer over here. It might look intimidating with all this stuff over here, but this is very old. It's at least 5 years old and it is running a 1070. This MS-A1 might not look much, but I do have a review on this guy, and this is at least 3 times more powerful than anything on this computer right now. And it's in a mini PC form factor. The only thing that this computer has this beat is probably the 1070 because this is using a 780M. But there is an Oculink where I could plug in another graphic card externally with a PCIe 4 lane, which either I could put in this 1070 or another graphic card to make it even faster. But for now, I am just going to be using the onboard graphic card because it's more than enough for what I need, because this is just my workbench computer, so I'm not going to be really gaming on this. But being that this is a 780M, which is one generation newer than the Steam Deck, and I'm able to get plenty of games working at high speed on that, this should have no problem running games. Anyway, in this video, I thought about it. I am actually going to be installing Linux Mint because I want to be more familiar with that operating system right now. I plan to just use it more of a desktop than it is gaming, but I'm just going to show you how you can still get that to work. So basically any Ubuntu-based Linux, you should have no problems doing the procedures that I'm doing to get any gaming working. Now I am going to speed run some of the operating system processes and stuff like that. This way you don't have to sit through the installation process. So I'm going to speed run all that, and then we'll get over to what I set on my desktop to get everything going. All right, so I'm booting off Ventoy and I'm just popping right into a Linux Mint 22 session, and I'm gonna go through, like I said, speed run the install. I do feel like now that it's missing this big computer, one, it's a lot cooler, but it's so small. So I did take the Mini Farms Oculink and I'm just leaving it here just in case if I do need to run a graphic card or something, I could just plug it right in. All right, so let's install Linux Mint, and like I said, I'm just gonna go through all the settings, let that go through. All right, so here we go. This is a fresh install of Linux Mint, and I'm just gonna go through the setup. Desktop colors, I'm going to change to dark mode because I actually prefer Linux Mint in dark, and the blue. Dark blue. There you go. Alright, so if you're running an NVIDIA graphic card, but I'm not, I'm running AMD right now, you do need to check Driver Manager to download the latest drivers. In my case, if I click it, nothing's going to happen because I don't have any NVIDIA. And then if you got a chance, just go over to Update Manager and update everything you got. So let's hit refresh, and I think I got a bunch. So I'm just going to install these updates because I think it has a kernel update in here too. Oh yeah, yes, there you go, 6.8. So I'm going to let that update, reboot the computer once it's done because it's a new kernel, and then jump back into here, and then we're going to start installing all our game stuff. While this is updating, so the reason why I prefer Linux Mint this time around is because it's not using any snap packages or anything and it has Flatpak baked in. So I don't have to do all the footwork to remove snap packages and also get flat packages to work with Ubuntu desktop. So that's why I decided to go with Linux Mint this time around. And again, I'm going to be using it for a little bit, so if I find out anything along the way that I want to change or modify, I will do that. But for now, I think it's pretty ideal that I don't have to deal with that in the beginning. All right, there we go. Everything's all installed. It took literally about a minute and a half. No, I don't want to use local mirror, and I am going to reboot now. And then we'll start installing stuff right after the reboot. Wow, that was actually very impressive. Less than 30 seconds to get to the main desktop from post. And I forgot to uncheck this, so I don't need that anymore, and everything's updated. All right, so the first thing we need to do is actually head over to the store, and we're gonna download a few things. Now, I wouldn't download Steam through here because it forces you to download Steam through their deb packages, which we really want Flatpak because we want to get all the other stuff in there like Gamescope and everything. So if I was to look up Steam and I click here, it actually doesn't have the ability to choose Flatpak, so I wouldn't install it through here. I would actually go through the command prompt, but we could install other stuff that we need over here, like Heroic. So we're gonna grab this Heroic. You see how it's Flatpak now? Heroic Game Launcher allows you to play most games from GOG, Epic, and Prime. So we're gonna install that, continue, and because it's Flatpak, it won't ask for password. And we are gonna install Lutris. Man, I can't type with this. Here we go. And there's the FlatHub version. We also want that. We don't want anything that's deb package. So we got the Flatpak of Lutris. Now, while we're dealing with all this, I am also going to install Steam. But because it's not in this manager, we're going to do flat, open up terminal. Let me make this bigger for you guys. Flatpak install Steam. And it's going to search through a list of Steam stuff. And in my case, what I want is, let's see, not the repo, not this one. com.valve software, no, this is Steam Link, sorry. App, DB grid, this one right here, 20. So we want 20. We actually want other stuff in here too, so I'm gonna run through these options. I'll let that install, yes. And then we're gonna go through that installer again. So I'm gonna hit up arrow, Steam, and we also want this one, the GE. Runtime number 6. Yes. Okay, now while that is done, I'm gonna go back here and install this stuff like Proton Tricks. That's one I want, the FlatHub version. And I want Proton QT right here. Let's install that so we can install other Proton stuff. And then we also want Flat Seal. Anything that you do with Flatpaks, you want Flat Seal to manage your permissions. So regardless if I'm going to install this for gaming or not, Flat Seal is almost like a must-have. And I also highly recommend Warehouse. This also helps with Flatpak to locate all the folders and everything that you need, so it makes it so much easier. Instead of trying to manually navigate, you could just go to this program and click browse folder and it'll take you there. So I'm going to install that as well. So far we got Heroic Game Launcher, Steam, Proton QT, Proton Tricks, and Warehouse installed. And then now we need to install Gamescope and Mango HUD. Okay, so those are the two things. Now, because we're installing through Flatpak, it's gonna work with all the other Flatpaks that we have, and it's gonna be compiled to the latest version every time we need to update. This way we don't have to manually compile and work with old files. So first thing I'm gonna do is hit up arrow, erase the Steam, and I am gonna do Gamescope. Now Gamescope has 3 different versions. This one is outdated, so don't use this one. Well, technically you still can. This one still works, but this one is what we need because it's system wide. So this way Heroic and also Lutris can also use Gamescope. So we're gonna use number 3, yes. And then now we have to go up and do Mango HUD. Now there's a few. Now if you get anything that says Valve Software Steam Utility, again, it does work, but it only works with Steam. So we need to get that free desktop, and we're going to get the latest version, 23.08, to match with our 23.08 Gamescope. This way we actually could use something called Mango App, which allows us to read inside Gamescope. So if you get the Mango HUD that's in the Steam layer, this will not work with Gamescope, so the data won't appear. So we do need to get number 4. We're just matching versions with the Game HUD. And that's it. We basically got our Gamescope, Mango HUD, Lutris, Proton QT, what else? Heroic Game Launcher, Steam. We got something extra, which is the community version of Proton GE as well. So we are pretty much all set to go. Now, because I've been installing through a couple of different launchers, what I'm gonna do is actually reboot the computer and install games so you guys don't have to sit through the downloads and stuff like that. And then I'm going to show you how to get everything to work together. So here we go. I installed a couple of games and also rebooted the computer to make sure all the FlatHub stuff got connected, because something that shows like multiple menu items. But yeah, that's besides the point. So first game we're going to be testing is called Gunfire Reborn, which is an amazing roguelike game. So if you guys ever decide to play it, it's actually very fun. With that being said, I'm going to head over to Manage and go to Properties. And the first thing we want to do is actually head over to Compatibility and switch over to either GE versions, because if you're using the Proton versions, the Gamescope will not work. You can use the community build version, which has that applied, but I am going to be using the Proton GE 9.11 Flatpak or 9.11, depending on how you download it, either through Proton Up or through Flatpak. So here I have that selected, and then we go over to General. And let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. But as you can see, we have this environment over here, which is technically not needed. I just wanted to put that to make sure that the FSR is enabled and game mode is enabled. So that part is actually not actually needed. What you do need is game mode run space Gamescope dash dash, no space here, Mango app. This will actually turn on your Mango HUD that supports Gamescope. And then your lowercase w, you see dash w, this is the width and height that you want. And the capital W and capital H is the targeted resolution. So I want it to be a very low resolution, 640 by 380, and it will actually convert it, upscale it to 920 by 1080 in FSR mode full screen, dash F. So dash capital F, FSR, and then dash F for full screen, and then dash dash space, there's a space here, and then command. So that's technically what you need, but I am actually going to add the environment over here unless you have your own config file for Mango HUD. I'm just going to list that stuff so I could actually see the FPS and FPS value and FSR and stuff like that. So with that being said, I'm going to close this out, hit play, and this should turn on my game with the Mango HUD and all the settings that I want, as well as FSR enabled. So as you can see, the quality is terrible because this is technically 640 by 380 upscaled, and you can see it's horrible. I could barely read the text, hit confirm, but I am getting about 900 or 700 frames, so 600 frames with FSR on and the sharpness of 2, and you can see that my game mode is actually on, and the GPU is actually using 68% and CPU is 30%. Now, if I can head over to settings, this is something I do because if you're on a Steam Deck and stuff like that, you want to reserve as much battery as you can, which means lowering the GPU and CPU usage. I will always go to video and lock the resolution up to like 60. And if I do that and I say I hit apply, you can instantly see the CPU and the GPU drop back down, which means it's going to save you a lot more battery in the long run. So that is what I usually recommend. And depending on the game, I might even go down to 30, because now that if you're a Steam Deck person or you play in that mode a lot, 30 frames is actually not too bad anymore, especially if you want the longevity of the battery. You kind of need to like the trade-offs on that. So anyway, long story short, I'm going to leave this back on no limit and apply. And you did see it was like about 600, 700 frames per second over there. I'm going to head back, and this time around, I'm going to exit this game. I like to test on this game because it loads really quick. But also, if I go to properties and I disable this, the capital F, if I actually not add that in, close that out, press play, you're going to see FSR is not enabled, and you can see how bad the graphics are. Like you can see now, it's not smoothed out, it's not scaled up, it's actually really bad. You could definitely see it from the hairline over here on the top of his head. I am getting more frames and I am using more GPU usage, but still, it's like you could tell that the FSR is off and it's not scaling anything. I mean, for a game like this that's actually very lightweight, you don't really need to run FSR. I'm just showing you as an example. But if I wanted to do capital F, SR, and change this to something that's a little bit more reasonable, like 1280 by 720. And then, oops, I did not close that. Close that out, hit play. And you could see that FSR is now on. It's going to scale up, but it's 720. Actually, now it looks really good. 720 scaled up, looks just like 1080. But I'm still getting 500 frames per second. Definitely using more GPU usage, like 70% now instead of 60. But we're still up there in the FPS and game mode is on. So that's how you would use Gamescope on a game that actually doesn't support FSR. Now, I do have a game called Black Myth Wukong, and that's the game I've actually been playing for the past day or two, and I've already put 11 hours into it. Now, this is a game that actually has built-in FSR, so you actually don't need to enable FSR in this mode. So in this case, I actually have everything missing other than this. This is something that, like I said, I put in earlier, Mango HUD config for FPS and FPS value, but in this type of setting, I actually do not need to enable FSR. Enabling FSR will double the FSR in a sense, which still would work, but I prefer letting the game handle the FSR if it's built in, because it could use FSR 3.1 or frame generation and all this other stuff. So in this case, mind you that this GPU is actually a 780M, so it's actually, I would say, slower than a 1070 if you look that up. This game is so well optimized that it runs really well, even in a low-end GPU like this. I mean, obviously I have low settings, but it's not bad at all. So obviously I'm not loading everything in. I'm just gonna go into settings. We have 300 frames right now, using about 85% GPU, CPU about 22%, but if I head over to graphics, you see it has built-in FSR, so it won't detect it through Gamescope because I don't have it enabled through Gamescope. But again, you run the sampling through here with frame generation on, because that's something I won't be able to provide using Gamescope. And then you kind of change your sharpness through here, and it runs really well. Let's continue a journey, because the menu is not going to really show you anything. But so here we go. This is the game. I'm probably going to die doing anything, but it's 103 frames per second right now. I'm going to head in and see.
Why so eager to die when you could walk away?
Yeah, I usually play this on controller, which is the Steam Deck, so I don't really even know the controls for this. I don't even really know the keyboard controls for this. Oh, I'm dead. But you get it. It's 110 frames using built-in FSR, and it's running on a mini PC right now. And technically, because I'm running on Linux, I could use DLSS enabler and probably double the frame rates on that, because that's what I'm doing on my Steam Deck right now, using the DLSS enabler and getting over 60 frames per second to play the same game. Just remember, the two things that you need is, if you go over to properties, you definitely need to change the compatibility to something like GE Proton. Something like this is like by far one of my favorite games right now. You can see I put 264 hours in. I just bought this game a couple of weeks ago. And same settings. I just go in, properties, compatibility, set that up to Proton, GE. Actually, I didn't even have that. And then I can set the game mode run over here and then hit play. This game takes next to nothing. It could run on anything. And there we have it. This is such a good roguelike game that is nothing I've ever played before, and it just captivates me, and I play this for hours and hours on my Steam Deck. And luckily, because it takes so little to run this, I could actually run this game for about 4 to 5 hours before the battery dies. But yes, you can see like it barely runs. The CPU is 1%, GPU at 28. Technically, I might be even able, there's like no settings like this. There's like no video settings really. And if I really wanted to, I guess, get FSR to run, I could lower it even more, scale it up, because the cards are so big, I could read everything. I don't really need to worry about the text in this game. But yes, now moving on out of Steam, if I go into Lutris. Now Lutris is another gaming platform that I would use to install games that I don't have either on Steam, Epic, GOG, or Amazon Prime. I would install over here, which is either Ubisoft or EA games, or any other games like Star Citizen or Battle.net. Those are like outside of their realm because they have their own little installer. That's where I would use Lutris. So I did install Blizzard, but in here you could actually go over to configure, and if you have the Gamescope mode set up the way that I have it, you could actually enable Gamescope and also do FSR generation. Now, this is the same settings that you would do. You could actually change this around to the resolution that you want, and targeted resolution would be whatever your monitor is, which is 1080, and then you would just enable that to get any games to work. Now, I don't have any games installed on Battle.net other than the actual Battle.net itself, so I won't be able to test anything. But the point is, if you have Gamescope installed through Flatpak, that's why I did everything through Flatpak, it will work on Lutris as well as Heroic Game Launcher. Again, just remember you are using GE or Glorious Eggroll as the Proton base or the Wine base. This way the properties are merged in there so you can use Gamescope. So I'm going to turn this off, but you get the idea. So I mainly play all my games on Steam and also on Heroic because I have a lot of GOG games. So next up we have something called Heroic Game Launcher. Now Heroic Game Launcher allows you to have multiple stores. You have Epic, GOG, and Prime was recently added, which was great. And if you log into all those, your games will show up in the library, and then you could just go in here to download it. So in my case, what I would do is go to Wine Manager, download the latest version first. So it's, for me, it's Wine GE latest, and I just downloaded that. That's the base that I'm going to be using for all my games. Go over to library, and say if I wanted to install a game, I don't know. I've been recently playing Slipways through GOG. And all you have to do is just hit install, grab whatever version. If you want wine settings, you would use default wine settings, or it'll know that it's the wine GE, and then install, and then it'll know to install everything. It has the download over here, which is pretty cool. And this game's quick to download, so I'm just gonna let this go. But what I notice is that I play X4, and when I play X4 and I try to install it through Heroic, since I have like 5 other expansions, Timelines, Kingdom's End, whatever, a lot of expansions or DLC contents, it doesn't install it through here. It will install the base game, which is about 20 gigs, but I don't know how to install the DLCs through this menu over here unless I'm not allowing it to do whatever it's supposed to do and I'm missing that step. So don't quote me on this. I just know through experience that I had trouble installing DLCs. So I just manually downloaded it off the website. Since Foundations is Linux based also, I could just download it off Linux, and also has built-in FSR, so I don't even need to run game mode on this. But yeah, stuff like this, you go into settings. I don't know why it does this, but I have to like go back and forth and select that sometimes and it will just work. But yeah, you have your stuff over here. You can enable FSR hack. Wine version needs to support it. This is basically, this used to be the old way. You could enable the FSR, which is the wine overrides. This is like, say 2 years ago. But now since we have Gamescope, you could just go up here and select Gamescope, enable upscaling, and then do whatever you want to do over here. You could, and then, you know, you got your width and then your upscale width, and then full screen, and then your FPS limiter, just so you don't overdo your CPU. Now, in my case, I would do this on my Steam Deck just to save the battery, like I was saying before. So let's do 640. This is like outrageous, by 380. I don't think I'm gonna be able to read anything. 1920 by 1080, full screen, additional options. I think I have to put the Mango app here, close this out, and then play. Yeah, that's where I would do the Mango app. I didn't even add the thing, but you can see FSR is enabled because this is smoothed out by the W's, and text is so blurred, meaning this is a 640 by 380 resolution scaled up to a 1920 by 1080 with FSR on, and it's running, well, it's at 60 frames per second because I bet you this is locked and I can't even figure it out because it's so blurry. But the point is, that's how you would get FSR to work if you're going to be using Heroic Game Launcher. And then the same goes for Lutris. If you're going to Lutris, you have to enable Gamescope over here. As long as your wine is GE or supports Gamescope, you're going to have no problem enabling it. Anyway, that's about it. That's all the stuff that I would do to set up the gaming process. Obviously, if you have an NVIDIA graphic card, you do need to install the NVIDIA drivers. There are slight changes to NVIDIA because this all works under Wayland, and now I know NVIDIA works with Wayland, but there's some glitches here and there. But I think support for NVIDIA this year is pretty much complete for getting Gamescope to work. But because I've been playing more on my Steam Deck and using this AMD graphic card and stuff like that, I've actually just jumped over to keeping it on AMD itself. I'm going to leave a couple of links for the Gamescope mode as well as Mango HUD so you can configure your own dash, or you could try to find one that's off Steam Deck to make it look similar to Steam Deck because it has all the properties there, and then play around with it. But yeah, gaming on Linux has been so much better than what it was before. And honestly, because of the Steam Deck, I'm no longer a FPS chaser. Like, I don't need over 60 frames or even over 30 frames. As long as you get me to 30 frames and it's playable, like Cyberpunk 2077, which I could get like about 40 frames, I'm content. Anyway, that's about it. If you guys are new to the channel, consider subscribing and also hitting that bell notification icon so you know when the next video is going to be out. And as I say in my nerd cave, hack till it hurts.